Welcome into WagerTalk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Rob Vino and Tony Finn of WagerTalk.com. We're talking the preseason game of the year in the Conference of Champions here, Rob Vino. We're talking USC, the Trojans, versus the Utah Utes, Salt Lake City. Of course, Utah losing last week kind of takes a little something off this matchup, Rob. But still, I think it's going to be fun to watch, fun to bet, hopefully. -3.5, that's the Utes at home, 65 being the total. Are you like anything in Salt Lake on Saturday?
Yeah, it's an interesting game, Drew, because I think situationally, all the situational college football players, bettors, will likely be on the Utah side, right? Utah gets beat. Now they're coming back home. USC's undefeated with the target on their chest and so on and so on and so on. It's still an important game. I mean, it probably would have been. In fact, it would have been even if the Pac-12 hadn't done away with divisions, because both of these teams would be in the South, and it would still be something to play for here. But without the divisions, it doesn't really matter. There's still room and a chance for Utah to get back to the top of the standings here because USC has to play UCLA later on this season. So a lot at stake here for both sides. I think if you're looking at the USC side and you want to buck the situation, and you don't want to play Utah, you want to play USC, I think it's important to them, just for the college football playoff rankings, when they come out, USC doesn't have a whole host of opportunities to upgrade their status in the college football world. I mean, the next 5 games after this one, the next 3 aren't going to be games that move USC up because the opposition is so weak. The last 2 on their schedule are UCLA at UCLA and then Notre Dame. Maybe those would be a help to them in the rankings, but they have to really get something done here against Utah, the 20th ranked team in the country, and it's a road game at that. The question to me right now, guys, has to be how good is Utah? I mean, we get this perception in our heads because of past history, because of Kyle Whittingham's tenure at Utah, that this is a physical team, that they're going to punish you, that they're going to be tough on you. And maybe USC is perceived still as a little bit soft and, more finesse than strength. But I don't know that that's the truth right now. Let's just take a look at Utah real quick, and let's look at them defensively and figure out how good they are. Both of their losses were on the road at Florida and at UCLA. In each of those games, their so-called trademark of physical style was really trashed by both of those teams. Florida ran for 283 yards against them, 7.3 per carry. And I get that some of that was done by Anthony Richardson, a mobile quarterback, right? But still, 283 rushing yards in Billy Napier's first game with Florida, 7.3 per carry. They lose the line of scrimmage in that game by almost 1.5 yards. Then against UCLA last week, UCLA's offensive line uproots Utah's defense, 203 rushing yards, 5.3 a carry. Again, Utah loses the line of scrimmage, 0.8 yards. In both of those games, guys, per play, Florida gained 7.2 per play against Utah. UCLA gained 8.2 per play against Utah. There was nothing wrong with Utah's offense. They just couldn't match point for point what their defense was allowing in those games. Anthony Richardson completes 71% of his passes. Last week, DTR, 78% of his passes. So you see where I'm going with this. They haven't stopped the run. They haven't stopped the pass against the 2 good teams that they played. The only teams that Utah's defense has stopped all season long, Southern Utah, San Diego State, and Arizona State. And there's a who's who of bottom feeders right now. If you take those 3 out of the Utah schedule, you're going to find out that they allow 457 yards a game, 219 on the ground, 238 through the air. That's a lot of yardage, especially against this offense that they're going to face now. Just by comparison, let's look at USC's defense real quick. And I want to really focus on USC's second half defense because Lincoln Riley, not necessarily known for great defensive adjustments at halftime, and he's probably not the one making these adjustments. But in the second half of games this year, USC's played 6 times. 5 of those 6 times, they've held their opponent to 8 points or less in the second half. The defense has really taken over. We know all about the turnover margin. USC's been great taking the ball away, great at not giving it up. The common denominator of decent team that they both played is Oregon State. Utah wins the turnover battle against Oregon State 4-0. They win the game 42-16. They got outgained, however, in that contest, guys. I mean, they win by 26, but total yardage was 417, 361 Beavers. Utah had 3 touchdown drives because of takeaways in that game of 25, 30, and 36 yards. So I don't want to call them cheap points because they took the ball away and got touchdown drives out of it, but those are very, very short touchdown drives to get 21 of those 42 points in that game. USC wins their turnover battle. They had to go to Corvallis to play Oregon State. They win 4-0 as well, but they only win the game 17-14, but they did outgain Oregon State. So make of it what you will, that comparison game. I would say this, summarizing this one, USC's offensive line is as good as Florida's, is as good as UCLA's. Their defensive line is better than Florida's. It's better than UCLA's. They should win the trench war on both sides here. And if they don't turn the ball over, I mean, if Utah's going to win, in my estimation, it's going to have to be a little bit up and down here because their defense just hasn't done the job. So I think USC is probably the right side. I know there's a lot of money out there for 6 weeks that's thought USC is a bit fraudulent and maybe overvalued, but it hasn't shown up yet, and I don't know that it'll show up here either.
Good stuff, Robbie.
Yeah.
Tony, coming to you next. What are you liking in the Pac-12 here, USC and Utah?
I think those are really good questions, Rob. As suggested, you ask yourself or ask someone else, or dig deep and do your due diligence and find out. But USC has won 5 of the first 6 games by 10 points or more. The last time USC won more games in the season by 10 points or more was all the way back in 2017. And there's a lot of differences between what Lincoln Riley is doing right now and what has been done with USC. He's systematically doing some things that make me believe he might be a pretty good coach. I'm glad that Rob brought up the Oregon State game. If you watched Oregon State last week against Stanford, nothing close to what the team was that played USC in Corvallis. That's the difference, obviously, I think, too. But you talked about turnovers. USC did not commit a turnover for the 5th time in 6 games last week. They've outscored the opposition 62-7 in the third quarter. Rob brought up the whole second half. Things that this Lincoln Riley is doing, which is holding his opponents in first quarters to almost no points at all coming out of the gate. Same in the third quarter, outscoring them 62-7. And it's difficult to do because this Utah team is a very disciplined team. I think they're in the top 10 nationally. Fewest penalties. Just crazy how disciplined this team is. They do everything pretty traditional, and that means that you don't see them kick field goals longer than 40, 45 yards. They're not going to take those kind of chances. This is the first game the USC has played, a pseudo-ranked team as well. So how good is USC? I think a lot of people, like Rob said, the pundits want to dog them for this and that, and I want to dog them because they're part of the Pac-12, but I can't dog. So is Utah. Pac-12 has been pretty soft. I really like the improvements the Pac-12 has made. USC, UCLA, what they did to Utah last week surprised me. Really did surprise me. I expect a much better performance, or at least something closer than what we got there. USC is doing some things again. Also, they're not just throwing the ball around. Travis Dye, he ran for 150 yards last week on 28 carries, a touchdown in that 30-14 victory over Washington State in the Coliseum. That's 5 straight games with a rushing touchdown. This is Dye's 28 carries, the most rushing attempts in a game by a Trojan since you have to go back to Ronald Jones, where he had 30 against Stanford in 2017. Lincoln Riley is going to take this team, this program to another level if allowed to. And is he going to be still part of? Are they going to still be part of the Pac-12? Are they going to be part of the Pac-10? I'm quite certain Lincoln Riley isn't excited about joining the Pac or the Big Ten, right? Hell, he left Oklahoma because he didn't want anything to do with the SEC. So he said, "Man, I get to go to the Pac-12. I can dominate this group." So give me listen. I like USC here. There's just no reason not to like USC. Utah's missing a couple guys that I think they really needed to be at a top level. One of the top receivers is good. listen, as good as Utah's been, and they really have been good, solid, and consistent, I still give me USC. Give me USC and the small bunch of points, right?
Like the breakdown, Tony, and maybe you can make the argument he made the run to USC for the NIL. Getting into Southern California.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe he missed the beach, something of that nature. But either way, guys, it's going to be a fun one. We got Utah, USC. Also, to Robbie's point, make note here, guys, the WagerTalk Live Odds screen. We did see money come in against USC late last week against Washington State. Of course, that was wrong, but a good place to check out where these numbers are, both sides and totals. Actually, the best free live odds in the business. That's the live odds tab right there, wagertalk.com.